Mark ended his call and returned his focus to the unfolding situation. Kyle was now steering Abigail back toward the car, his hand gripping her arm with unmistakable force. Abigail's wide eyes darted toward Mark again, silently pleading for help. His chest tightened as he saw her subtly repeat the SOS signal, tapping her hand against her leg. Mark adjusted his posture, exuding calm authority as he approached the car. He couldn't risk Kyle becoming hostile before the police arrived, so he needed to act with precision. Just as Kyle opened the car door to usher Abigail inside, Mark called out in a firm but non-threatening tone, "Excuse me, sir, can I have a word?" Kyle froze, his head snapping toward Mark. His eyes narrowed, a mix of annoyance and fear flashing across his face. "What do you want?" he barked. Mark raised his hands in a gesture of peace, his body language relaxed but deliberate. "Sorry to bother you. I think I may have accidentally clipped your car in the lot. If it's yours, we'll need to exchange insurance info." Kyle hesitated, glancing between Mark and Abigail, who was already halfway in the car. "You must have the wrong guy," he snapped. "I didn't hear anything, and my car is fine." Mark stepped closer, now blocking Kyle's access to the driver's side door. "Maybe so, but I'd feel better if we checked to be sure. A quick look can't hurt." Kyle's jaw clenched, his frustration mounting. Mark caught the briefest flicker of panic in his eyes, confirming his suspicions. Kyle wasn't worried about the car. He was worried about being delayed. Abigail, meanwhile, remained frozen in the back seat, her small frame trembling. Mark risked a glance at her and offered the faintest reassuring nod. His presence alone seemed to ease her terror, and she responded with the slightest nod of her own. "Look," Kyle growled. "I don't have time for this. Move out of my way." He made a move to push past Mark, but Mark sidestepped quickly, blocking him again. "Sorry, sir, but I can't let you leave until we settle this." Mark's tone hardened, his Marine training seeping into his words. "It's protocol. Let's handle this the right way." Kyle's eyes darted to Abigail, then to the highway beyond the parking lot. Mark's calm yet commanding demeanor seemed to be rattling him. He muttered a curse under his breath, then gestured impatiently toward the car. "Fine, let's check. Hurry up." Mark led Kyle around to the back of the car, positioning himself strategically to keep an eye on Abigail while maintaining control of the situation. As Kyle pretended to inspect the bumper, Mark pulled out his phone again and covertly dialed 911, keeping the line open. "I'm here with the suspect," he whispered. "He's agitated but unarmed, as far as I can tell. The girl is in the back seat. I'm keeping them here." The operator confirmed that officers were less than 10 minutes away, and Mark exhaled a silent breath of relief. Still, every second felt like an eternity. "See? Nothing's wrong," Kyle snapped, straightening up. "Now, if you don't mind." Mark didn't let him finish. "Actually, there's something else I'd like to ask," he said, his voice sharp with authority. Can I see your driver's license?" Kyle blinked, caught off guard. "Why the hell would I show you that?" Mark folded his arms, his gaze unyielding. "You're acting suspiciously, and I'd like to confirm your identity. It's a safety precaution. If you've got nothing to hide, this won't take long." Kyle's hand twitched toward his pocket, and Mark's eyes followed the movement, his muscles tensing as he prepared for the possibility of a weapon. Instead, Kyle pulled out his wallet and thrust it at Mark with an angry scowl. "There, happy now?" he sneered. Mark took the wallet but didn't open it. He wanted to keep Kyle distracted and off balance for as long as possible. "Thanks. Stay here while I take a look." He turned and took a step toward his rental car, using the opportunity to glance at Abigail. She was sitting perfectly still, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her terrified eyes locked onto his, and he mouthed two words, "Stay calm." Kyle, meanwhile, was growing increasingly agitated. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. "Look, I don't have time for this," he snapped. "I've got places to be." Mark shot him a pointed look. "Then you should have thought about that before causing a scene." The tension crackled in the air between them, heavy and volatile. Mark's mind raced, calculating his next move. He needed to keep Kyle here for just a few more minutes. But how? Suddenly, Kyle lunged toward him, his hand reaching for his wallet. "Give that back," he yelled. Mark sidestepped again, narrowly avoiding the grab. "Calm down," he said firmly. "You're only making things worse." Kyle's face contorted with rage, and for a moment Mark thought he might attack. But before Kyle could make another move, the distant sound of sirens filled the air. The sound seemed to drain the fight out of him. His shoulders slumped, and his gaze darted wildly around the parking lot. "No, no, no," he muttered under his breath. "This can't be happening." Mark took a step closer, his voice low and steady. "It's over, Kyle. Let the girl go." Kyle's head snapped up, his eyes blazing with desperation. "You don't understand," he hissed. "I had no choice." "There's always a choice," Mark replied. "And you're about to make the right one. Let her go, and this doesn't have to end badly." For a long moment, Kyle seemed to consider his options. Then, with a resigned sigh, he stepped away from the car. Mark didn't let his guard down, but he allowed himself a small glimmer of hope. "Abigail," he called gently, keeping his eyes on Kyle. "Come here. You're safe now." Abigail hesitated, her small hands trembling as she reached for the door handle. When the door finally opened, she stepped out on shaky legs and ran to Mark, throwing her arms around his waist. Mark wrapped his arms around her protectively, his heart aching as she sobbed into his chest. "It's okay," he murmured. "You're safe now. You're going to be okay." Moments later, the police cruisers pulled into the lot, their flashing lights illuminating the scene. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, and quickly subdued Kyle. Mark handed Abigail over to a female officer who led her to a waiting ambulance for a medical check. As the adrenaline of the moment began to fade, Mark felt the weight of the day settle on his shoulders. He had done what needed to be done, and Abigail was safe. Kyle, after being processed at the scene, was taken into custody, facing charges of suspicion of kidnapping and potentially other related offenses depending on Abigail's statement and further investigation. The police secured Kyle's vehicle as evidence. Mark provided a detailed statement to the officers, outlining his observations and actions. Abigail, though traumatized, was physically unharmed and was being comforted by paramedics and the female officer. The scene concluded with the ambulance departing for the hospital with Abigail, followed by the police cars transporting Kyle to the station, leaving Mark standing in the quiet parking lot, the weight of the averted crisis slowly lifting.